Hi there, I'm Father Dave Mowers with Baraboo Area Homeless Shelter, and we're standing in our facility that is under renovation at 1200 Silver Circle in the city of Baraboo. With lots of projects left to do, we're still hoping that we will be able to open this winter sometime in Baraboo to serve the homeless folks who are in Baraboo and in wider Sauk County. We've been working on this project for nearly 2 years, in fact a little more than 2 years. There had been a warming shelter on the south side of the city that closed. It was operating from October to April, and in fall of 2018 they announced that they would not be reopening for 2018-19's winter. So a group of community clergy got together and said, well, what can we do? And that led to some community meetings, which lots of you were present for and part of. And it became clear to us, for insurance reasons and for just being effective at doing this sort of work, we needed a separate not-for-profit corporation to hold the work for the homeless shelter. So we incorporated Baraboo Area Homeless Shelter in November of 2018. And really from the beginning of that organization, we have been looking for a site, for a building. This facility here is a former memory care unit off of Silver Drive on the south side of town, and it became available for us in September 2019. So we're now 13 months into renovation, and despite how it might look, we're actually pretty well nearing the finish line. Most of the larger things are done. And as we walk around today, I'll show you some of the progress that's been made and talk about what hurdles we have left before we can open, and also about what our vision will be for the shelter as we open and serve the community well. This space doesn't look like much in particular right now. This is going to be an office. Right now it's full of doors and furniture and other things that we didn't want to have in other places of the building while work was going on. What you may or may not be able to see is it's recently been painted, and there's new trim along the floorboards, and pretty soon there'll be flooring in here. This is the office space, and you think, well, it's an office, it's like any other office. But one of the things that has driven the vision of Baraboo Area Homeless Shelter's board and supporters from the beginning is that this shelter would provide more than a bed and a meal. What we really hope to do is to create a system with paid professionals and with volunteers that would help clients to overcome the hurdles that cause them to become homeless in the first place. Those hurdles are as unique as the individual. The stories are unique, and the sorts of supports that each client might need to overcome being homeless, to become employed if they're able to be, and address those sort of basic life needs, those are as varied as the individual. And so it helps to have someone with some background in the field, with some social work training, who can really help the client to do their own work, to identify what those issues were and to come to a solution that feels comfortable for them and that helps move their life forward. To do that, we have to hire a staff member. And so the biggest project that remains in front of us before we can open the shelter is to hire a director. And that director hopefully will spend some time in this space. Another piece of important DNA in our organization's structure and vision and values is that we would be as collaborative as possible with other agencies in our community that are already doing good work. And one partnership that's really important to making this happen is the partnership that our board has crafted with the Community Action Council of Central Wisconsin. And they're located in Wisconsin Dells. They're an anti-poverty agency that served a 6-county region, including Sauk County, since 1968. And we've entered a partnership agreement with them, so they will be the people who operate the shelter day to day. Our board at Baraboo Area Homeless Shelter will continue to have oversight for the shelter. We'll continue to be able to speak to procedures and how things are done. We'll continue to work in Baraboo to mobilize volunteers and to raise funds for the shelter. But the people that we employ will be employed by Community Action. And that gives us the benefit of their significant background and expertise, their long history of running a shelter like this in a couple other cities in our area, and helps us to not have to do a lot of HR stuff to figure out where to find health insurance when you have one employee as an organization. All of that stuff will be taken care of for us. So We are interviewing, as we record this, for that director, and as soon as that person is hired, we'll be on track to open within a few weeks' time. I'm standing in a space that will be, and once was, the kitchen facility in this former memory care unit that is about 5,400 square feet in total and has 9 bedrooms. And this had a kitchen when it was a memory care unit. But when the memory care unit moved out, the building sat vacant for some years before it was purchased by our landlord, who leased the building to us. And during the sale process, the building was broken into and vandalized. And so there were no cabinets, no countertops, no flooring. There was holes in the drywall. And there was pretty much a roll of paper towels in here the first time I was in this kitchen. What you can't see on camera here, but is sort of strewn about all over here, is a bunch of used kitchen equipment that we have purchased from a variety of places that is all going to go into this room along with some other things that we're still working on getting. Normally, this would be a concern that would keep us from opening, and this probably is the largest project that remains in terms of being able to open the shelter. But one of the realities of the pandemic that we're in is that the way that we do food service will not be what we anticipated initially when we were making plans for the renovation. We won't be able to do congregate dining at all. So what we will likely do is something that would be an adjustment to the plan that we made, which was, the original plan was to have community groups, volunteers, folks like you, carry in meals, heat them in this kitchen, and then serve them in the dining room that's out in front of me right now. What we'll probably do instead is have volunteers continue to make meals, to bring them, but to have them packaged individually so folks can take them and then eat them in their rooms. This shelter, we planned for 30 beds, 30 folks maximum. It is not possible to have 30 clients in this building and social distance in any sort of adequate way. So we will be opening at a significantly lower capacity than what we anticipated when we drew up the project a year ago. We don't have to like that, but it is the reality of this particular time, and this particular time will come to an end someday, I think. This kitchen is one project that remains that we'll probably pick at as we get open and as we begin to serve clients. We'll finish up even after we open. But it is one thing that, if you look around, some more work to be done. But that will not deter us from opening, but it is something that yet remains in the building renovation. I'm standing in the north wing of the shelter, and around us are 4 bedrooms where we anticipate that families with children and women will be able to stay. And off to my right, there's a doorway that we'll be able to lock at night and keep that wing separate from the rest of the facility. To my left, or to my right, to your left, is a brand new bathroom. There was originally one bathroom that had one toilet and one sink in this space. It was actually for folks to get their hair done. If they were staying here, living here, they could have their hair cut, and the sink was a special sink like you have in a hairdresser's place. When we began the planning on this project, because this is a commercial property and because we're using it for something else than what it was originally designed to be used for, we had to have our plans submitted to and approved by the state of Wisconsin's Department of Safety and Professional Services. And they look at commercial building projects all over the state. This is really a small-time project considering the plans they usually review. But what we had to do was bring the building to code for the kind of thing that we want to use it for, since it was commercial space to begin with. And one thing that meant is that the bathrooms had to be completely redone. So the bathroom that was here was torn out completely. On the other side of the building, a second bathroom torn out completely, and we had to start from the ground up. As you know, concrete, tile, plumbing fixtures is all really expensive work. And I'm so glad that when we realized the amount of work that was going to need to be done to make the bathrooms possible, that members of the Baraboo community stepped up in a huge way to provide us with a lot of donated supplies and labor. I think if I list all of the companies now, I'm going to miss some, but I'm going to do my best. So we had 2 different concrete companies, Beckwith Concrete, Fairfield Concrete, that helped with tearing out concrete in the floor and then putting in, and then we had plumbers come to put in main water supply and main sewer line to go in and out of the building. And then we've had 4 or 5 plumbers, including Tom Brooks at Baraboo Plumbing, Jerry Sprecher at Sprecher Plumbing, Potter Plumbing, and Terrytown Plumbing. I think those are the 4 that have come together so far on 3 different occasions, working together as one to do the plumbing going into each of the bathrooms. And they'll be back at least one more time when the flooring is finished in each of the bathrooms, which would be in the next couple of weeks. In this bathroom, the flooring is not done. In the bathroom on the south wing, it is done. And so we'll be able to put toilets and showers are in, but toilets and sinks into the spaces there. We never would have been able to do this project without the support of businesses like those that I've just named. And Tom Brooks was especially important in convening those plumbers, getting them all together, getting them scheduled. And Gary Kowalski and Terrytown Plumbing have been huge supporters of us in doing this work as well. In addition, the DSPS review caused us to do a lot of electrical work. And Hills Wiring in West Baraboo has done almost all of that work for a lot less money than what it actually cost, I think. So they have given a significant contribution too on the building project. And it's a little bit unfortunate that we had to do this, but that's we want to try to build this the right way so that it's a shelter that is here long after I'm done being president, long after we're in the middle of this building project. We want it to be an institution that's here for generations to come, so that there's always a plan and always a place for folks who find themselves homeless to sort of pick themselves up and figure out what their next moves are, and to have some helpful, friendly, supportive folks around them as they do that. This is a typical sleeping room in the shelter. We've got sort of a C-shaped room with 2 closets in the middle and then a space on either end that'll eventually have a bunk bed on either end. We have donated bunk beds in the facility, and Slumberland Furniture in West Baraboo donated all of the mattresses that we need, and we're working on assembling all of the rest of the frames that we need, and we're pretty close on having all of that done. A lot of times people have misconceptions about how folks become homeless and about why they might come to stay with us. There's, I think, especially in small towns, a sense that what homelessness looks like is a row of panhandlers sitting on State Street in Madison. And homelessness does look like that in some cases, in some places, especially in urban areas. That's not what rural homelessness looks like, though. The median age of a homeless person in Wisconsin is 9. So there are a lot of homeless children who obviously didn't choose to be born into whatever situation they were into. But what we know in Sauk County is that around 80 to 100 people at any given time are in the county who are homeless. Most of those folks are living in cars, or they're living on someone else's couch or in a basement or somewhere. And sometimes if they have conflict with someone they're staying with, that's really all that it takes for them to become homeless. About a third of folks who find themselves homeless have some kind of serious to severe mental illness. Another third have some kind of drug problem. Some of them have both. But neither of those is the majority. What we see in rural environments often is that folks have a medical problem, or there's a medical problem in their family that caused a significant part of their becoming homeless, whether that was that they became unable to work because of their condition, or they stopped working in order to care for a family member, or they have some kind of chronic health condition that has become worse or that caused them to lose a job, or something on that order. And so it's not just the sort of services you might think that people would need when they become homeless. Certainly, some folks do need to be in drug treatment, and some folks do need to hook up with county social services to have mental health conditions treated. But there's also just classic medical problems, things like cancer and diabetes and things that are common that people have, but for whatever reason did not have the support system around them to be able to navigate that. And I think any of us that have had a serious health problem or that have had family members with a serious health problem know how complicated and difficult that is, even if you have a lot of resources, even if you have a lot of ability to work the system and to talk to insurance companies. It's exhausting. And if you don't have those resources to begin with, well, then it's just impossible. And sometimes you get people that end up choosing between paying rent and paying medical bills, or paying rent and paying to see a doctor, or whatever. And I'd say in about half of the cases that we're aware of in Sauk County, there's some kind of medical thing going on that's certainly a factor in how people become homeless. One other concern that we'll talk about as long as we're in the bedroom here, people sometimes get concerned that a homeless shelter will be a place where people can just stay forever. And there's actually lots of federal regulation that prevents that. But our plan here will be that people can stay for up to 30 days, and that time would be able to be renewed twice. So actually they'd be able to stay up to 90 days, so long as they're working with our site director to overcome the obstacles that cause them to become homeless. One hurdle that we already know is going to be a challenge is the lack of affordable housing options in Baraboo and in surrounding areas. It's very difficult to find apartments, houses for rent, that sort of thing, where folks who are in the shelter would be able to access just because of how much they cost. And so we know it will be a challenge to get clients referred out of the shelter into housing, but that's certainly something that our director and our team of volunteers will be working to do for every client who wishes to work with them on that. If someone's here and they're just here because they're trying to get out of the weather and they don't really want to work on a plan to overcome being homeless, then they're certainly welcome to stay. We don't want anyone to freeze to death. We don't want anyone out in very hot weather, but they would be staying for 30 days in a year's time, no more, and then they would be on their way after that. Some other concerns that sometimes community members have about homeless shelters are that they might increase crime in the area around the shelter, or that they might detract from property values, or that they might just themselves inside the building be a nuisance or a place where bad behavior happens. Largely, those things are myths, but certainly when you deal with the sort of clients that whose lives are in chaos and who have a lot of trouble going on, sometimes trouble follows them. And we have a plan at Baraboo Area Homeless Shelter to make sure that we're good neighbors to the folks near us in the Silver Drive neighborhood here. There is no evidence at all that opening a homeless shelter in a particular neighborhood does anything to property values. We did an analysis of the last warming shelter on the south side of the city as we were in discussions with the village of West Baraboo in spring 2019 about a site in the village of West Baraboo that ultimately they chose to have us not move forward with out of concerns for the neighborhood there. That analysis showed that the properties nearest the previous warming shelter actually went up in property value about 20% greater than the average property in Baraboo in the years that the warming shelter was open. So property value doesn't do anything except for really kind of mirror whatever's happening in the rest of the community when a homeless shelter pops up nearby. But it is true that this place will probably generate about as many police and EMS calls as any other place where you would have 30 people living in a building. If you have an apartment complex that has 30 people in it, that generates more calls for emergency services than a single-family home with 3 or 4 people in it. So we know that. But we're also standing against one bedroom where we will have a house manager living, and hopefully there'll be 2 house managers living in the shelter. And those will be folks who ensure that the rules of the shelter get followed overnight, especially. So when there's no paid professional staff on site, they will be here. And often those folks in shelters like ours are people who recently have been homeless, but who are showing responsibility, who perhaps are employed elsewhere, and who are getting on their feet. And we would trade their presence in the shelter and their living here for free rent and a stipend. And then they would be on a schedule with each other to make sure that at least one house manager is always here overnight, to make sure that if there are people that are trying to break the rules of the shelter, there's someone here to intervene, and to try to keep both the clients as safe as we can and to try to keep our neighbors safe. We're doing this as a way to ensure and to promote the common good in our community, not to treat one sort of people better than another sort of people. But our society doesn't do a good job of caring for homeless people, and the system for navigating how to get out of homelessness once you're in it is terribly hard to navigate. And so providing a place where we can help clients to decide what their goals are, and then to decide what changes they want to make to their lives to get out of the situation that they're in. We need a place like that in Sauk County and in Baraboo, and we're really excited that we'll be able to provide that sort of safe place here very soon for people that are experiencing homelessness in Sauk County. We would not be here poised at the start line of this shelter without the tremendous support of the Baraboo community. And really, the primary way that support has come is in $25, $50, $100 checks from individuals and small organizations throughout the community. This effort has been built on small donations faithfully made by lots of folks for more than 2 years. But we've also had a lot of help from other institutions, from Sauk County, and from businesses in the community, as I've already mentioned. And really, the list of donors who are businesses or organizations, civic organizations, religious organizations in the city is now more than 60 businesses and entities long. So we could be here a long time if I went through and listed every single one of them. And we're just so grateful for all of them. And I think, speaking for myself, it's so thrilling in this really divided, partisan time in the middle of a terribly bitter election campaign to be able to come together on anything, but especially to be able to come together on something that is such a noble pursuit, to take care of the poorest among us. That is a worthy cause for all of us, regardless of our politics. And to have that unity happen in a county that is bitterly divided on politics has been a breath of fresh air and something that has really excited me about this project. As you can see in all of the pictures that we've taken here, we have a lot of stuff in this building, and we get asked a lot about whether we would like furniture or whether we would like donations of other kinds. And really, we won't. We don't right now. We are trying to get the major projects finished in the building, and then move what we have into where we think it's going to go. And then we'll see what we need at that point, which we don't think will be very much at all. And on the financial side, while the project has gotten more expensive, it's a building project. Initially, we thought that maybe we could do the building renovation and a year's worth of operating for about $160,000. Now we're up to about $210,000 is what we think the total cost of that will be. But I'm happy to tell you that we have raised almost $190,000 to date. And we have a major grant application out right now that if we get it, and we should know in the next 2 weeks, that's about $25,000, and that will put us across the finish line on $210,000. It's still really important that folks give, and the reason is 2022 is coming. We will have raised the money for the building renovation and for that first year of operating, but obviously that's not the goal. The goal is to be able to operate every year, not just in 2021. So we will begin immediately on raising the budget for 2022. We won't have to do a great big building renovation every year, or even hopefully for the foreseeable future, which means that the number that we'll be seeking to raise in 2021 for 2022's operations is about $110,000. So just about half of what we've raised for the building campaign and the first year of operations. So hopefully that number will be approachable and will be something that we can sustain year after year as the Baraboo community. The Baraboo Area Homeless Shelter Board will continue to seek grants and to write them and to seek government funding, but also will require support from businesses and folks like you as we proceed here at this shelter.